Houston, and it is time, so we're going to go ahead and start here. And let me just say to everybody on the line, good morning, everyone. And we have people in Europe and elsewhere too, so good afternoon to you, and welcome to this Living in Oneness Summit program. I'm Steve Farrell, and I'm the Worldwide Coordinating Director for Humanities Team, and as I mentioned to Jane, if you've heard us talking here, I am just totally excited about this program, and it's actually true for all of us in Humanities Team. I'm going to be interviewing this very special guest today, Dr. Jean Houston. We're going to be talking about human capacities, new leadership models emerging in today's world, Global Oneness Day, Greece, and much more. Dr. Jean Houston is a scholar, philosopher, and researcher in human capacities. She's one of the foremost visionary thinkers and doers of our time, one of the principal founders of the Human Potential Movement. I know you're going to really enjoy this program. We have about 14,000 people registered for today's call. Thank you so much, everyone, for prioritizing time to be here for this important conversation. As with all of our calls, this call is interactive with each of you, our listeners, so we do want to invite you to put your questions and comments in the question window on Instant Teleseminar. I promise that we'll get to at least a few of your questions during the hour. A little about Humanities Team as we get started. In Humanities Team, we see there is only one presence, the divine, and see we are all offspring, embodiments, and expressions of the divine. This means God's love, light, grace, and peace are ours because there is no separation, and we share the same essence. Since our founding in 2003, we've done our level best to live as one with the divine, each other, and our earth home. We don't need to be perfect or even excellent at this. It doesn't have to feel heavy. We must only do our best. And we can have fun with this. When we talk about oneness with the divine, of course, this is true for all of life, not just humanity. This has repercussions for how we see ourselves, others, and the earth that is our home. Of course, this means everyone and everything is sacred and should be treated as such. It also means we're responsible for the world around us because, in truth, it is part of our authentic self, encompassing the whole of the earth. Perhaps there is nothing more important than this, coming to see ourselves as a cell in the body of the divine, the earth, and stepping into a role where we're caring for the earth and the world around us. In addition to the Living in Oneness Summit, the focus of today's call, we convene Global Oneness Day, a Spiritual Leadership Award, conscious business programs, service projects globally, prayer meditation calls, and much more. I mentioned just a moment ago this is a Living in Oneness Summit call. The Living in Oneness Summit is now a year-round program. All programs are free and are recorded, so you can listen in for free 48 hours following each call. Each week we're interviewing key leaders who can share about living in oneness in our own life, with our partner, as a parent raising children in our home, in the workplace, and as a public service leader. Today we'll be talking about living as one in our own life and as a public service leader. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here for this important call, and please do get comfortable as we get started. I'd now like to introduce our special guest. Dr. Jean Houston, scholar, philosopher, and researcher in human capacities, is one of the foremost visionary thinkers and doers of our time, one of the principal founders of the Human Potential Movement. A powerful and dynamic speaker, she holds conferences and seminars with social leaders, educational institutions, and business organizations worldwide. Jean Houston has worked intensively in 40 cultures and 100 countries, helping to enhance and deepen their own uniqueness while they become part of the global community. Her ability to inspire and invigorate people enables her to readily convey her vision, the finest possible achievement of the individual potential. She is a prolific writer and author of 26 books, including A Passion for the Possible, Search for the Beloved, Life Force, The Possible Human, Public Like a Frog, A Mythic Life, Learning to Live Our Greater Story, and Manual of the Peacemaker. Welcome to the Living in Oneness Summit, Jean, and it's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Steve. It's wonderful to be with you. And just a little correction, it's 30 books as of January, and it's 109 countries. I seem to be living in numbers these days.
30 books, awesome, in 109 countries.
Oh, golly, and I dislike writing intensely, too. I have to become someone else. I literally change my persona because I mentioned before, because I'm really a pretty decent cook. When I take on my cook persona, I have none of the blocks that I have in Jean, who is phobic for writing persona.
Well, thank God you are out, even though you did mention on the program here earlier in the spring that you don't love writing, but boy, are you a good writer or what? And also an off-the-chart speaker. So I'm glad you're staying with it. And gosh, maybe one day we'll be in the same area, and I can even we can cook together. That would be fun.
That would
You're probably
be wonderful.
a much better cook than I am.
No, I doubt that.
Gene, if you want, we're going to jump in here in a second to leadership because you've got just so much incredible potential, including, I mentioned just a moment ago when we were talking informally, you were an advisor in the Clinton White House. You were there in the Clinton White House, so who better than you? And you, with UNICEF in 109 countries, and so the United Nations and all over the world. So who better than you to talk about this whole new emerging leadership model? But before we jump in, would this be a good time to maybe do something experiential, a guided visualization or spiritual experience or something like that?
Surely. Why not? Well, friends, everybody listening around the world, I understand it's 60% around the world and only 40% American, which sounds very good. I'd like to introduce you to a way of engaging your higher self. And I call this higher self the entelechy. It's an ancient Greek word, and it means the dynamic, purposeful energy that moves us, that lures us to our highest possibilities. It is the entelechy of an acorn to be an oak tree. It's the entelechy of a baby to be a grown-up human being. And so this is what I'd like you to do and imagine. If you can stand up and you're on speaker, that's good. If not, that's fine too. But wherever you are, would you just place your hands out in front of you? And if you're holding a phone, then just one hand. And it's like in a patty cake, fashion. And I want you to imagine, and for the next few minutes, accept that it is true, that standing opposite you, or you are in the presence of this entelechy, this great high being, this essential self who is looking upon you with so much love, with such appreciation, with deep, deep caring. Yes, knows your folly, but also knows your glory, knows the bummers, but also knows the breakthroughs, but sees you whole and sees you beautifully. And so you begin to feel yourself. Some of you may even feel a slight tingle in your hand as part of that presence is becoming so apparent. And you feel yourself nourished and cherished, deeply, deeply loved. You feel yourself richly seen. And not only deeply seen, but thus through this deep seeing, being able to see others in their fullness, regardless of how difficult they may or may not be. And so continue to receiving this love, this empowerment. You feel yourself empowered, acknowledged, energized. And it's as if your evolutionary circuits, because all of us live still only at a fraction of who and what we really are. Your evolutionary circuits are being activated. You feel a kind of fullness filling you, as if the optimal template, the optimal pattern, the higher images of yourself are beginning to be engaged, and you can feel yourself moving toward greater capacity and more than capacity, a deeper soul-activated living, and thus feeling yourself so loved, cherished, nurtured, nourished by this great high being, the essential self, who I'm calling the entelechy, that activates your higher purpose, the deeper plans and possible paths of your life, and know yourself deeply seen. And knowing that from this moment forth, that if you wish, you can continue with this process, just standing up when you can or sitting down, your hands out in patty cake fashion, and receiving the great love, affirmation, encouragement, and illumination, incentive to live your highest life.
Oh, gosh. Oh, man, let's breathe that in. That was just beautiful, truly beautiful. The 5 steps to peace is something that anchors us. It was one of the things that came out of the Conversations with God books that were Neil Donald Walsh's books with the divine, and it talked about the five in the fifth step where we live our lives as our highest and grandest self, and I just was reminded of that throughout as you shared that guided visualization.
He's my neighbor, you know.
I know.
Yeah. He lives down the block from me.
Yeah. Oh, and of course he loves you too, as all of us do in Humanities Team.
He's a great man. Great.
That was beautiful, Jean. Thank you. And gosh, let's just jump in. Jean is a part of Global Oneness Day this year. She's actually been a part of Global Oneness Day the last couple of years also. This year it's on Saturday, October 24th. She's on the New Leadership Model for the 21st Century panel, and that panel is 2:30 to 3:30 Pacific time. Again, that's on Saturday, October 24th. If you go to globalonenesssummit.org, you can read all about this Earth Day for an Awakened Humanity. You'll see Jean Houston there on that new leadership panel. Globalonesssummit.org is kind of a funny URL because there are three S's in there between oneness and summit, but you're spelling it correctly where you spell it that way. Jean, I was sharing earlier, again, as we were talking informally, I read James O'Dee's book recently, The Conscious Activist, Where Activism Meets Mysticism, which is a beautiful book. Yes. It's a book for the library. Yes. And in the book, James talks about you. He talks about this moment where he was in Washington, D.C. He was the director of Amnesty International's Washington, D.C. office, and they were getting ready to publish a big paper. And he reached out to you before publishing the paper. There were some organizations that were involved in brutality, and he had his descriptions of this. He sent them to you. And in the book he said that you really taught him something because you said, look, James, if you go down that path in shaming these organizations, it won't accomplish anything, you've really got to take another approach. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because I think that shaped James' life. And as I was reading that passage, I thought, my God, I wish more people in Washington, D.C. and in the corridors of power all over the world were reaching out to you to say, Gene, what do you think? Because I think you'd point them in such a great direction.
Well, yes, I do remember that time. It was quite a few years ago. James had been with Amnesty International and had seen such awfulness all over the world, as I certainly have also in my work. And you can just get angry and go into a rage and then, objectify the other people as evil, even though they may be trying very hard. Or you can sit down and really work together to evoke these other organizations and people their deeper original purposes, which are in many cases is just to make a better world. And it is to remind people of the power of the spirit that they have within themselves, that they are not simply local beings living in a particular nature or culture, but they are part of the world mind taking a walk with itself. Everything has shifted in our time. We are no longer ethnocentric or nation-centric. We are world-centric. And so you really have to think, is what I'm about to do and blame and shame, is it going to lead to the advancement of this world? And generally it does just the opposite, because all you do is you activate the negative hormones in the other people, So we really developed many different strategies together about how to not only, first you have to work on yourself. That's very, very, very important. And I'll talk about that with regard to leadership. The work on the self. There is, we are living at the beginning of the golden age of brain and mind and body and even soul and metaphysical research. We know that we are so much more, and we cannot continue with the attitudes and ways of being of centuries past, you see. So let's just take leadership, for example. Modern leadership, as it moves, has to be aware of three things. Complexity. Our world is far more complex, interdependent than it had ever been before. Connectivity. We are all interconnected. Creativity. Beneath the surface crust of consciousness, we are part of the great creative mind that is the mind of the universe. We live in a living universe. By the way, one of the best books of our time is The Living Universe by Dwayne Elgin. We have our horizontal, a leader learns horizontal things, strategy, competency, but that's not enough. he or she needs the vertical development of mind, of the soul, of the spirit, of the senses, of the sense of the huge story of which they are a part, you see. So new leadership is not blaming or shaming, it's collaborative, it's participatory. This is a network world. It's the expansion of the mind, the body, the soul, the self. It is moving from what Robert Kagan referred to as the socialized mind. That's where your expectations come entirely from your environment and your old training, the old world, to the what is called the self-authoring world, where you hold your ideals, your points of view, but often they run you into trouble because you're living in a collaborative world where all the boundaries are falling apart. So the final is a self-transforming, where you know yourself as part of a process, interdependent. You see things not just systemically but spiritually. You have comfort with ambiguity. You democratize greatness wherever you are, and that's what I find in the new leadership. Ultimately, it also has to do with what I'm going to talk about, something that, because I have 2 books coming out right away on quantum physics, which is my particular passion, that one of the things that we do know about our time that is so, so exciting is that we have discovered something that many mystics have long known, that the perception of the universe actually evokes the universe that is observed. So if we change the way we look at each other, the way we look at our planet, the way we view the universe, then the universe itself, of which we are a living part, don't just live in the universe lives in us. The universe spontaneously reflects this change back to us, as the universe is not separate from our perception of it. So this means that our creative imagination, our love, our compassion is truly divine, in that it literally affects the very blueprint of reality, whether that's another person or a nation or our world. Our divine creative imagination is the part of us through which God or cosmic mind or the universe imagines this world into being. And we live in a universe of open-ended potential at each and every moment. How we partner it is what is helping us dream it up. How our universe manifests depends on how we both individually and collectively work with it. So the real power is in the viewing, isn't it? And this makes daily life in the quantum universe and in the global oneness very, very interesting. So what I try to train people to do is to vastly expand their point of views, because then when you know that you are in what the Buddhists call interdependent co-arising, then all kinds of things become possible. The shifting of time. The universe turns on and off every microsecond. It is new. This means not simply new in terms of the universal outer, but the inner world. That means time as well. That's why you can enter into time and shift minor things in the past, as well as create an emerging future. I mean, so many things become possible in this new understanding of the way reality works. And so we see how, as conscious members, dear James, conscious activism, conscious members of the great field of consciousness, immersed in a field or a web of energy with the most minute particles of matter connected to everything. This is a source ground. It is like a gigantic love field, a gigantic memory field. And we are held in this cosmic mind, and we are at the place that we could call, in this technical term, speciation. And speciation means that we are on the verge of emergence into a more developed species, some greatly, some most quite a little bit, but it is happening in our time. Now, when these kinds of things are happening, I think you have to see, as you see so much in your own splendid work, Steve, is that invariably you have the sunset effect, and that is when the sun goes down. It blares out all over the horizon, and that's the same thing that is happening with the sunset of many, many old ways of being and knowing. And that's what we're experiencing. We're saying, ain't it awful? This is the end time, but it isn't. It's a beginning time. We are in what I would call a vector of history. We have entered and we live in a time of huge transition, unprecedented in the Earth's history. The systemic shifts that are happening everywhere. The entire Earth situation is at risk. So that, I get tired with future studies, because future studies, they tend to be linear. They say, if this, da, 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 da. They look ahead to a point of time. But evolution is a bending curve. It is unexpected. We are in a place very different from anything that we ever expected before. And a lot of my new work has to do with not only looking at the oneness of the earth in which we are all interconnected, the boundaries are dissolving right and left, but there is also a phenomenal rise of spirit. We feel called. And so instead of crashing materially into the limits of growth, that's all people write about, we're on the verge of a global civilization, global oneness. I mean, you're right, you folks are really right out ahead of the game. And so we are about to simplify the material side of life and move into an appreciation of the deep forces, the deep spiritual forces that guide us, the non-material side of life. And yes, I predict, and I tend to be fairly accurate in my prediction. I'm not bragging, it's just so. There's going to be a big system crisis, and we're going to see it in the 2020s. But then opportunities will arise to move into a breakthrough rather than a collapse, you see. It's a birth. It's like my friend Barbara Marx Hubbard. It's a birth. We're experiencing the contractions in the ecology, in the weather, in the financial contractions. But it's like in the baby, the waters are about to break, and we are going into an irreversible flow of new birth. And that's why we and people like yourself, Steve, who are creating this global wellness, because we are moving into an earth voice. It's a voice for the collective humanity. We're coming into this time of great, great, great transition.
Wow, so exciting. Let me share that there is a free recording, as with all of our programs. This is being recorded. It will be available for 48 hours. So for all of you listening, I'm taking notes. I'm sure others are as well. But also know that we'll be sending out a thank you email with a link to this that you can listen to for 48 hours. And as well, the instant teleseminar link that you got with registration is the recording link. So even before we send out the thank you email, you can listen in again to this program. Wow, just simply stunning, Jane. And I want to just go a little deeper into some of the things that you were talking about. There's so many things I could jump into, but you said the real power is in how we view it. And before that, you said, but first we must work on ourselves. And you said, I want to come back to this and talk about it because it's so important. And in Humanities Team, likewise, this is our perspective as we talk about awakening ourselves and the world of oneness, because until we're awake ourselves, which is a continuing journey, there's no real end point there, but that we don't have a lot of effect. It's just our vocal cords until we're awake.
Sure.
People can feel, the oneness, and then we can really have some impact. Can you talk a little bit about this working on ourselves, because that's so important?
Well, working on ourselves, that is working on the vertical dimension, is probably one of the most important things we can do, so that we learn how to live out of the mystery that is both within us and outside of us. There are powers of body, mind, and spirit that reveal truly a higher order of humanity that resides in each one, just waiting and needing to be released. The exercise that I gave of meeting the entelechy, the essential self, would be an example of that. We can learn to tap into fields of knowledge normally inaccessible to ordinary thinking. We become a bearer of a new story, one that serves as a beacon and inspiration to all who will carry the higher dream for a world in transition. Now, this then presupposes that you have access to these inner capacities. What I do in my work is I help people first extend their sensory and physical capacities with all manner of new kinds of exercise, sort of state-of-the-art, so that they do that, they rejuvenate. then, I mean, I'm infamous for looking 30 to 40 years younger than I actually am. It's quite a good shock to many, many people when they meet me, because I do this stuff. You know, I'm not saying that I'm not offering a rejuvenation treatment, so please, erase that. But the point is, when you begin to live fully in your body, mind, and spirit, something else begins to happen. Psychologically, you realize, and I think I said this before, you are not an encapsulated bag of skin dragging around a dreary little ego. You are an organism in a huge environment. You have access to many, many different kinds of personalities, and we talked about this last time, so that you're not stuck in ego. Ego is just one simple image among the multiple images that are there for you to bear, to care for, to emerge. You are a muchness. They talk about Shakespeare as being myriad-minded, meaning that he had access to so many different ways of seeing and knowing. Well, the fact is we all have that as well. And so relationships, of course, begin to shift when you are able to look at a person from the fullness of your being, and thus you do not enter the blame game. You enter into the great play, the high play of mutual evocation and appreciation, because what you appreciate appreciates. Then the fact is that we are bearers of a whole new story. We have lived through the time in which the old story has died. You know, the ways that we thought what we knew what it was all about. And it is all shifting. And it is a shift that is in part about the universe story. We know a great deal, much more, about how the universe came into being, how our universe, which, by the way, is 300 sextillion stars in our universe, but that, by the way, is more stars than there are grains of sand in our world, but that we were born out of an earlier universe, and there may even be a mother universe which contains all these multiple universes, but at the same time we are a 34 trillion cell wonder. Each one of you is 34 trillion cells, each of which is connected in some way to the whole, and the whole is not simply the body, but is also related to everything else. We probably are in a great hologram in which everything is interacting with everything else. Now, when I have studied genius and creativity and the turned-on mind, which I've had the great, great, great pleasure and blessing to do with some of the greatest minds of our time, have been research subjects of mine, I have found that these people simply accept this. They enter into the depths of themselves, they drop in an idea, and the idea is suddenly taken up by the muchness of which they contain, because beneath the surface crust of consciousness, creativity is going on all the time because we are so interconnected. Now, I believe that as we tap into this creativity, we can really come into ideas, examples, even inspiration, even details on how to make a better world. That's something that I do all over the world, so that we can solve these colossal problems that simply cannot be solved by the usual means. Do you see? So we tap into a kind of universal means. And I've just seen this so much that I know that it works. And ultimately, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. As my old friend Teilhard de Chardin said, we're not simply human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And this spiritual reality is, as they say, nearer than hands and feet, closer than breathing. It is part of what we are. So in expanding, the physical, the psychological, the narrative and mythic, the new story, and grounding ourselves in the source of our existence and spirit, I do believe we have everything that we need to make a better world. Now, how do we do it? I mean, one of the things that's going to happen, here I'm going to make my interesting projections, is that with the mass breakdown of our structures, mass movements of people north or south, chaos leading to the possibility of breakthrough, urban forms are going to shift. We're probably going to move into eco-villages, recreating the ways to live on an earth that is sustainable. A shift, new freedoms, not under the parental control of traditional institutions. So we are in this tremendous state of opportunities to recreate and transform how we live and relate on this earth. Education has to change. It is changing. It is failing everywhere. Whenever you see so much failure, whether it's in governance or education or health, you know something huge is trying to rise to replace it. So, for example, in education, and I think I spoke about this before, I've never seen a stupid child. I've seen incredibly stupid and minded, soul-diminishing education, because it's often linear, it's often giving the information or too much information from an older way of seeing, but in a new world, in a new world mind, in the oneness that you speak of, Steve, something else is trying to happen. That's why education has to be hands-on, sensory-rich, experiential. You know, if the child is not good at linear analytics, for God's sakes, let them then see things musically or in the dance. They may be kinesthetic, body things. If they are given to, different kinds of sensing and relationship, then let them be relation-oriented. For a full education, you need to educate body, mind, spirit, and soul, and, emphasize and empower the child in his or her greatness. That's why we have to restore arts back to the curriculum, arts, music, drawing, painting, dancing, because then you are educating the whole child, you see. And the same is true certainly with adults. It certainly is true with adults. So sometimes I think I'm running the world's longest adult kindergartens, because we help adults recreate their own genius at a new level, you see, as we do.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, so rich and so fabulous. And many of these themes, Gene, we bring around throughout the year. I mentioned the Living in Oneness Summit. We do these programs once a week, and you've touched on so many important things, just so many important things in the things you just shared. Let me just bring in, though, some listener comments. Anne in Barcelona says, beautiful blessing. Thank you, Gene, and James in Dublin. Wonderful connecting experience. And Carol in Phoenix says, I love you, Gene. I'm glad you write anyway. I'm sure Carol's speaking for others. There's some questions here. I'm going to get to them in just a second.
Sure.
But first, let me just to come back to something I mentioned earlier, that it's not many people that are actually, during a presidency, an advisor in the White House. Now you were an advisor in the Clinton White House during President Clinton's.
I was an advisor in a lot of interesting places, and still am.
Yes,
but
yes,
not in the American presidency. I'm not touching that one. But
right.
No, I'm not now.
Right. How would you? Yes, let's broaden this question. As we look at whether it was a U.S. presidency or other prime ministers or presidents, leaders of governments around the world, how would you advise them? What would you ask them to do or invite them to do in today's world?
It doesn't differ one whit from what I've been talking about, what we've been talking about now. They really have got to develop their vertical dimension, their interior, spiritual, psychological, moral depth, if they are going to take on so great a job of having to work across boundaries. See, because they have to work across it. We're in an interdependent world, They have to be very comfortable in ambiguity. They have to realize that there's no such thing as their being, the decider, because that leads to disaster, as we've seen. But that it's network teamwork. It really is, and you have to democratize greatness. You have to democratize the forms of leadership. But above all, it is to really, if you're going to go for a higher role, and it's not simply in terms of president of this or that country, it's about wherever leadership is. See, I think leadership should be distributed throughout any community, organization, and that point, in fact, is that the genius of it is when you make everybody participate in leadership. It cannot be a top-down hierarchy anymore. That does not work, as we have seen to our great sorrow. So, for me, it is their own inner development in the light of social change. I created a whole new kind of system, a program called social artistry, which is human development in the light of social change, because social changes are requiring all kinds of capacities, strategies, ways of thinking, crossing the great divide of otherness, which we never, ever, ever had in history before. I'm an old Platonic scholar, a scholar of Plato and the ancient Greeks, and one of the things that I love in the Republic is Plato's great um, dialogue on how to have decent governance is that the philosopher king, is what he calls it, the leader, has to come in, doesn't really begin to take on leadership till he's about 50 years old. Of course, you can't do that anymore, but has had an enormous amount of spiritual, psychological training, also body training, gymnastica, aesthetic training, musica, dialectica, the way of interacting and one-on-one with people. I mean, it's those kinds of things that then, and mathematica, which means something quite different from our present mathematics. It means really seeing the relationships between all things. So you are highly trained in the ancient Greek sense, so that when you come into your roles, you really are magnificently coded with understanding, and you have lost your local ego because you have become deeply, deeply empathic to individuals and to the whole. I mean, in my own small way, I have tried to do that, and sometimes very successful, sometimes not. But the problem is too many people who go into the political situation, especially, not business leaders, that's something different, business is quite different, but who go into the political form often come out of a legal background or a background of money and really think that they are ahead of the game, and they are not. They are often the last players.
Yeah, we can certainly see that here in the U.S. As the
yes.
The presidential election kicks off for next year. Many of these things you were describing, Jean, when you were describing the new leadership, it made me smile because within Humanities Team, I think, we practice a lot of these things. It's just
yes.
being spirit guided as a team and really being open to receiving that guidance and really hearing each other, what you call a democratized form of leadership, where the network as a team. And it does work.
And one of the biggest things, that is happening with regard to all of this is the rise of women to full partnership with men in the whole domain of human affairs, with terrible backlash. But by God, it's happening all over the world, even in places that you don't think it's happening. And this is going to shift everything. Because when men and women are really, truly equal in sharing the partnership of making a better world, then everything shifts. Because with women, the emphasis is on process rather than product, on making things cohere, develop, grow, understanding the subtleties of relationships between ideas as well as between people, where the inner life is as important in many ways as the outer life. So that as this begins to happen, I actually helped start a group called Rising Women, Rising World, where we have brought in some of the finest women who are doing at the frontiers in science and art and education and economics, and we are trying together to design a world that works from their perspective, and very interesting things are happening. But the rise of women to full partnership with men in the whole domain of the human agenda is probably the most significant shift in the last 5,000 years.
Yeah,
and that is what I believe is ultimately going to make the difference.
You're talking to one of the token males here within Humanities Team. There aren't many of us. I'm one of the.
Well, yeah, but look at that,
males.
Steve. Why is
mostly
that? Why
mostly
is
women
that? You go to
my,
the big.
It's my
yeah,
wife's
but
comments.
why? Because when you look at all the seminars and the workshops, around the world, with few exceptions, it's 70% women.
Yeah,
sometimes
well,
higher.
They get, candidly, women just get ego out of the way easier than most men do, and you can't really paint with a white brush here. But
sure.
I've just found that it's easier. Women do tend to. When I was in Silicon Valley, it was the same. Our leadership team was about 70% women, and 30% men. And here it's probably 90% women and 10% men. And I just think it's easier.
My odds are a little higher in my work, but they are higher. But what I find is it may because of, as dear Barbara Marx Hubbard says, it's a birthing process. we are all in a situation of birth. As I said, we are inside the womb of new becoming, and the waters are breaking. And women have a natural affinity for the breakthrough, which is really a breakthrough to a birthing process, and that may be why they are almost unconsciously drawn to strategies, suggestions, trainings that allow them to be midwives, not just of soul, but of a whole new era. I've never actually thought of that before, so it's nice to bring it up.
Well, that spirit does that, which is you can hear when you talk. You're just opening yourself, and spirit's just speaking straight through you, because the incredible wisdom that flows is just amazing. Jean, let me bring in a question from one of the listeners.
Sure.
There are many here, so apologies to all of you, because we certainly can't get to all of these. But here's one of the questions. Just looking for, this is from Diane in London. Diane says, how do we start a new leadership model without offending those who don't believe in the connectivity of all beings on Earth, for those that are not awake yet?
Well, the fact is, one is talking about a reality of connectivity, and a lot of people are still, not a lot, but a certain significant number are caught in same old, and thinking that, that today is going to be exactly like yesterday, and yesterday will be like tomorrow, and that simply isn't true. I wouldn't worry about that so much, because quite frankly, the level of shift and changes, the acceleration, we're hitting what is called the evolutionary wall, where you can't get away with the same old anymore, and especially in the 2020s, which are just a few years ahead of us. So that the need for new ways of seeing, doing, creating, work with a team or a group of friends, create your own teaching, learning communities where you really begin to develop new strategies, ways of seeing, and you're developing yourself at the same time. It's a vertical development that also leads to the horizontal development. Even if you're within an organization where same old is still going on, you will find many, many people who are deeply concerned about the fact that the old methods are just not working anymore, and they aren't. And you just gather them in small groups, you work together, you create something that is new. It is true that to create new things also puts you, on the line of the big crossing the threshold from an old way of being to a new way of being. But prepare yourself, my friend, because, it's coming so fast. I am sitting here right now by the Pacific Ocean, watching the ocean. The fog is very heavy. I'm in Bandon, Oregon. I don't live here, but I came for my friend's 80th birthday. And we are surrounded by smoke from the forest fires. Those of you know, the United States on the western thing is just filled with forest fires, and the droughts. You cannot turn your head away from all the shifts, and I could talk about London too, because I've been there recently, and what is happening there. But there's great other things happening. Go to the Optimist. It's called the Optimist Daily, because it is truly one of the most interesting magazines that will show you. It's online. All the different ways of getting into. Being consummately, it's called the Optimist Daily. It's your daily solutions news, and I just opened it right now. The paint made of glass bounces sunlight off metal material to keep it cool. And then there's one about psychological thinking. Try to unfocus more often. You just go into a lovely, wonderful, resonant state with everything and enjoy the benefits of thinking in creatively. So they now found a way of using DNA to track the elephant poachers in Africa and stop the killing of Africa. That's just in one day's news. But the fact is, there is so much good news there. Be filled with the understanding of all the tremendous good things that are happening around the planet, which I assure you far, far, far outweigh the negatives. Working in 109 countries and traveling and working constantly, I can assure you this is the truth. Now, your journalist will not do that, because with the journalist, if it bleeds, it leads. Not that there are not great journalists who are seeing other ways of thinking and doing, For example, in London, you have a magnificent magazine called What Doctors Don't Tell You, WDTY, run by my friend, the great Lynn McTaggart and her magnificent husband, and they are picking up all kinds of new information. We are living in a sea of transformative information. And if you then really explore it, get in touch with Lynn McTaggart. She's in London. She'll tell you how to do it. But then bring it together to your groups. Bring it into the field of people who you think are just caught in Neanderthal pastures, and postures. I made a Jungian slip there, postures and pastures. And you will see a shift because we have no choice, because the world is shifting. We have no choice but to shift ourselves.
Isn't that true? We have no choice but to shift ourselves, and certainly that's what we're about here in Humanities Team 2. And it is marvelous, as you mentioned, Jean, in the mainstream media, we don't see all of the positive things because, as you say, if it bleeds, it leads. And so right now it's about money, but it's changing, and there are many sources of positive news, of inspirational news, and this Optimist Daily online sounds fantastic, and Lynn McTaggart is wonderful. Of course, she's been part of our Global Oneness Day over the years, too, and just does such amazing work with her husband. Jean, we only have 14 minutes. See, I knew the hour was going to go fast, and I want to be sure to just give you a minute to talk about your program where you're returning to Greece on September 20th. You mentioned it might be your last tour.
I think so.
It's a great opportunity. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, surely, I love Greece. I've been to Greece maybe 17 times. I began when I was 21. And I find Greece to be not only one of the most beautiful countries in the world, but certainly for the Westerners, it is one of the most ancient. I mean, our museums are filled with its art, our theater with its plays, our poetry with its magic, our athletics with its Olympian generosity, our governments with its forms and the starting of democracy. We owe a great deal to Greece. And even now, Greece, in its tremendous ferment, has never forgotten its origins. So, as an old Greek scholar, I am thrilled this time to bring another take on Greece, which is the healing thing. So I'm taking people through the not just the classical Greece, but to Asclepian Greece. Now, why do I do that? Because Asclepius was the great healer of Greece. He lived around 1300 BC, and what he did was create a whole new model of healing, which he called somatherapia, body healing, and also nootherapia, mind and soul healing. And by being able to do this, he made people well, and the great centers, after he died, great centers grew up around him, the main one being at Epidaurus. And they were great healing centers in which regeneration, healing took place at a much deeper level. And so, first, they worked with the physical body, nurturing the physical body, rebalancing it through music, relaxation, theater, putting the body into a state of enjoyment, you see. And then they entered into realms of entering into both deep inner states of consciousness, deep silence, to access the soul, dreaming. And we do a lot of this, how to be redreamed by the healing dream. And anyway, so it was a new marriage of spirit, body, recalibration, symbology, mythology, athletics, music, different worlds coming together, and all of this being not only restorative but activating of transformation because of the incredibly fluid nature of our body, minds, and psyches, and by extension of our societies and cultures. So this is also an ongoing seminar in some of the most beautiful places in the world, including the greatest spa in Europe, where we're going to be in part. And I will take you through being in the world of the ancient Epidaurus, ancient Asclepians, and there you will find all kinds of new ways of healing, holing, whether you need healing or whether you are interested in evoking others, but most of all, if you are interested in tapping into the primordial wisdom and creative traditions of the ancient Greek world. This will be my last tour. I've done about 40 over many years, but I put so much time and effort into this, and we are charging not a fraction, but much less than the actual cost of what this is. So one is affordability for us to do this, but the other big thing is also that I have to put, the remaining years of my life in service of other kinds of things. So this is probably it. It'll be September 20th to October 9th, September 22nd to October 9th. It is a magnificent trip. People say it is the venture of a lifetime. And if you want to know, go to my website, Jean Houston. That's JeanHouston, one word, JeanHouston.com, and you can read about it. The Asclepian. Holon, it's called Holon, the Holon Tour.
Holon Tour, JeanHouston.com, and that was September 22nd to October 9th.
October 9th.
October 9th, and perhaps Jean's last tour. So, wow, that sounds fantastic. If anybody has a September, a late September, early October that's open, that sounds like it would be just such an amazing experience. Jean, I'm going to share in a minute where people can catch up with you again here and during one of our biggest program of the year. But before we get to that, what is you mentioned? We are at such a crucial moment in the Earth's evolution. You've said unparalleled, and you've
yes.
talked about all of the ways, the things that we can do to connect with the divine, to connect with Source, to come into our full capacities. What is your call to action to everybody here as we get close to wrapping up this hour? What are things that you'd like to invite all of us to do?
Well, of course, kindness is the first one. Just like the Dalai Lama says, it's kindness. We have some magnificent spiritual leaders in our time, don't we? The Dalai Lama, and of course this extraordinary Pope. And if you haven't read his new encyclical about the ecology, do so. I mean, the way that he has just turned everything around as he understands that we are people planet. We are simply not just persons inhabiting the most beautiful planet in the galaxy, Really explore the nature of your own story. And really begin to think of, this is where I've been, this is where I wish to be, and begin to realize that you have spiritual roots that are willing to work with you to change not just your life, but change the lives around you. Learn why you were born. Realize that something is knocking at the door of your consciousness. All of us are feeling called. And so really begin to explore with others new ways of living, thinking, perceiving, interrelating. And so one of the things that I really think is the most important of all is saying, maybe I have only one life to live. Maybe you don't. Maybe we have many, but at least this is the one you've got right now. How do I want to live it for the rest of my life? What do I need? And it's not money or influence. What do I need to deepen my life? If you hold that out to live and to be of real benefit to the world, if you hold that as a major question, I mean, I say every morning when I wake up, dear God, let me be a blessing to someone today. But if you hold, I really wish to grow to be a deep and luminous steward of the earth today. And you really hold it, and then you just watch, and it may come as something very simple, smiling at the checkout clerk at the store, or, really, talking to a child. Or it may be something that has to do with your community, finding a place to shelter women who are in an abusive situation. Or it may be even running for a council. But whatever it is, if you really hold in front of you your agreement saying, I am ready to learn, to grow, to develop, and to help, then you will find that synchronicities, coincidences will happen, and you will be called.
Isn't that the truth? Boy, so wonderful. I love it, Jean. Oh, my God, I just love it. And by the way, the remarks are just off the charts here, too. For example, Laura from Denver says, I knew this would be a magical hour, but Dr. Houston blew my socks off anyway. Much love and gratitude. Laura, you're speaking for all of us. Oh, wow, so amazing. And Jean, thank you so much. That was jeanhouston.com to learn more about Jean, to follow her work, read about her books, and also look into this tour if that is something you might be interested in, September 22nd to October 9th, where she's going to Greece, and it's possibly the last tour that she'll be involved with. So, Jean, I want to thank you so much. I'm going to come back and thank you some more, but let me get started that way. I want to get to some important announcements here. This program has focused on living in oneness, so I want to invite people to be part of something that's pretty new that Humanities team created. It's called Community Circle, and we created it for those who want to go deeper into this experience of oneness. It's all about living as one with the divine and with the earth and with each other and all of life. Some of the things that it includes are all of the audio links over the years to all of our programs. So there are over 215 interviews that you can access. We have a private Facebook page where we, including all of the leaders in Humanities team, where we bring in our own stories of how we're living our life, our challenges, our successes as we live as one. We created a price point of only $10 a month because our demographic has a tight budget. That's true for people that we're involved with all over the world. So if you go to humanitiesteam.org, our website, and then up at the top, there's a little green Join Us button. If you click on it, you'll learn about Community Circle. Again, that's $10 a month. Also, we have some exciting programs coming up I want to tell you about, including one with Jean. Our next call is on Thursday, September 3rd. It's at 9 a.m. Pacific time. It's with Steve Behrman, who's also called Swami Beyondananda, and Steve offers so much wisdom, and of course he's a total stitch. His humor's just wonderful. That's September 3rd at 9 Pacific time. Then on Thursday, September 10th, we'll be doing a program with Barnett Bain, who produced The Celestine Prophecy and other really wonderful movies. It begins at 10 o'clock Pacific time, and Barbara Marks Hubbard, Anna Marie, Pete Harris, and myself co-host that call. We're the three hosts, and Barnett Bain is our special guest for that program. All of us are really looking forward to it. And then the next day, on Friday, September 11th, I'm doing a program with Greg Braden. We're going to be talking about his new book called Resilience from the Heart, The Power to Thrive in Life's Extremes. And that's Friday, September 11th. It's at 1 o'clock Pacific time. If you go to livinginone.com, you can learn about and register for all of these calls. All of them are free, and the replays are also free for 48 hours. Steve Behrman, Barnett Bain, and Greg Braden are only a few of the coming programs. We do programs usually once each week, and that, again, is at livinginone.com. We talked about Global Oneness Day a little earlier. Don't miss Jean Houston during Global Oneness Day, and other really incredible people. She's mentioned some of them on today's call who also come in and give up their time for this Earth Day for an Awakened Humanity. This is the 6th Global Oneness Day. It's on Saturday, October 24th. Jean's panel is called New Leadership Model for the 21st Century, and it starts at 2:30 Pacific time. The entire program is free. It is 12-plus hours from beginning to end, and if you can't make all of it or part of it, you can listen to that free replay for 48 hours. Jean, I want to come back and thank you again so much for being with us on today's call. You're just amazing. God, your brilliance and your heart energy and everything is amazing.
Oh, you're very kind.
I can see why you said you look so young. In all of your pictures, by the way, you look so young. So
well, I look like that.
You're living it.
The funny
Yeah,
part.
you're living it.
Scares some people. Listen, I forgot to mention something. I offer something that's incredibly inexpensive, and that is social artistry. It's going to be in August, late August, well, pretty soon, next week, in Ashland, Oregon, and has young people and people from all over the world coming, and we train you in how to develop these capacities to be a social artist, one who really makes a difference. It's not on my website. You can go to either socialartistry.org or jeanhoustonfoundation.org. Jean Houston Foundation or socialartistry.org. And that's just another way of entering into this work in terms of its social things, and I'll be teaching part of that. I should have mentioned that, but it's inexpensive and it's lots of fun, and you'll learn really ways of developing yourself to make a difference in the world. So that's something else. But for the tour, then go to GeneHouston.com.
Fantastic.
Anyway, it's been a great pleasure talking with you. You're such a wonderful interviewer.
You too. Social artistry. Thank you. It's such a pleasure, Jean, always to have you on this program. You're just so amazing, and we're so grateful to have you. And so yes, do everybody check that out, socialartistry.org and the Jean Houston Foundation to learn more about this program in Ashland, Oregon that's coming up just around the corner. Let me also just thank my colleagues and partners, Nanette Kennedy and Dee Meyer. They helped create this program and promote it. They're running the back end of the call now. Also, the Global Council, there are about 40 of us. We're almost all volunteer around the world, and we're here because, just as Jean mentioned, this is such a great time to be alive, and this shift is happening, this awakening, and we all can be a part of it. We all are a part of it, and these calls actually are great instruments for stepping more fully into our own role here in this awakening that's occurring. I also want to thank all of you, the listeners, for being here. Thank you so much for prioritizing the time to be part of today's program. Really appreciate it. And in closing, I want to invite everyone to really live as one. This is ultimate reality, and the way that we create this shift on the earth is to embody it. And it doesn't have to be serious. It can be fun. When we live this way, we support the health and well-being for ourselves, our families, our communities, and the world around us. And we invite others to live this way through our embodiment of it. In oneness, we can also become involved in service projects. As we know, life is about giving more than getting, and certainly we feel this when we're involved in service projects. So have the most marvelous day, everybody, and we'll see you back here again in a couple of weeks, and it's on September 3rd. Thanks again for being here. And Jean, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your time on the Oregon coast.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be with everybody.
Okay, everybody.
Thank
Take care. Have a great day.
Bye.